Good afternoon and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland. I'm Hugh McKay, President of the Board of Directors of the City Club. You take for granted that your lunch today and everything you buy at the grocery store is safe to eat. You take for granted that your prescription drugs and your over-the-counter medicine are safe and that you're adequately warned of risks. You take for granted that your blood transfusion is safe and that your sunscreen is actually screening the sun, and you name it. But today's speaker, Food and Drug Administration Commissioner Dr. Margaret Hamburg, is not taking it for granted. Dr. Hamburg graduated from Harvard College and Harvard Medical School and completed her training at the New York Hospital Cornell University Medical Center. She served in the U.S. Office of Disease Prevention and Health Promotion, then became Assistant Director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases at NIH. Dr. Hamburg also served as Health Commissioner of New York City, the youngest in the city's history. She created the country's first public health bioterrorism defense program and held prominent positions at the Department of Health and Human Services and at the Nuclear Threat Initiative. As Commissioner of the Food and Drug Administration, Dr. Hamburg oversees 11,000 employees and a budget of more than $2 billion, and she's charged with overseeing products that account for 1/4 of all consumer spending in the United States. The challenges Dr. Hamburg and the FDA face are ever more complex and ever more perilous. For example, in light of the flood of imported food and drugs into this country, the FDA recently wrote, quote, "The safety of America's food and medical products remains under serious threat," unquote. Suffice to say, Dr. Hamburg faces daunting challenges in a job that affects the lives of all of us every day. When Dr. Hamburg was appointed to lead the FDA, the director of the American Public Health Association said, she is, quote, "all about integrity and science. She can be tough when she needs to be, and she's going to need to be real tough in that job." So please welcome to the City Club the real tough Dr. Margaret Hamburg.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction. I have to say that it's a little different ending than some that I've had before, and my children might agree with you. But it is a real honor to be here this afternoon. This is such a distinguished forum that's been promoting relevant and spirited dialogue since 1912, and congratulations on your upcoming 100th anniversary. And I hope that you will be able to continue to hold this forum and its engaging discussions for at least another 100 to come. I have to say at the outset that I apologize. I'm slightly under the weather this afternoon, and I hope that as you leave this luncheon, you will leave with some food for thought, but not with a communicable disease. But if I sneeze or cough, I'll try to do it in the appropriate public health manner so as not to spread germs. But it really is a great pleasure to be here with all of you. And wonderful to be in Cleveland, which is a city with such a rich history in medicine and the sciences. The city of Cleveland and the state of Ohio are at the forefront of healthcare, biomedical research, and the development of new biomedical-related companies. We are, of course, just minutes away from the Cleveland Clinic, where my father-in-law received excellent care, I'll add on a personal note, but more importantly, it's consistently ranked as one of the top hospitals in the nation, perhaps around the world, and a source of cutting-edge research and innovation. We're just a short drive from the University Hospital of Cleveland, which is a leader in cancer research, and of course the renowned medical training and research programs at Case Western University as well. All are sort of beacons for those of us in science and medicine. And Ohio's commitment to biomedical research and development has not gone unnoticed. Investments in the biomedical enterprise in the state exceeded $2.4 billion in 2009, with Ohio institutions and companies attracting a quite impressive $700 million in funds from the National Institutes of Health alone. So this is really impressive. It is really important. It's important for patients and their families. It's important for improving health care. And it's important for the economy of this state and for our nation. And I believe that FDA is an important partner in these efforts. So let me tell you a little bit about my agency and why it matters. You've heard a bit already. But I want to talk just a little about why we as a nation really need a strong, modern Food and Drug Administration that makes science-based, data-driven decisions on behalf of the public's health, and that's equipped with the knowledge and resources that it needs to serve the American people and to promote innovation in the 21st century. The breadth and scope of the FDA is extraordinary. And I have to confess that when I became commissioner a little over 2 years ago, I really did not understand the magnitude of the challenge. Consider that FDA is responsible for ensuring the safety, efficacy, and security of drugs, vaccines, and biological products, medical devices, and certain products that emit radiation, as well as the oversight of the safety of our nation's food supply, cosmetics, dietary supplements, animal drugs and feed, and most recently, tobacco products, which was a historic addition some 2 years ago. In other words, our agency is entrusted with promoting and protecting the health and well-being of anyone who eats, takes an over-the-counter painkiller, or a prescription drug, or uses a medical device like a pacemaker, or has an X-ray. The list is long. And as you heard, the products that we regulate make up almost 25% of every dollar that consumers spend on products in the United States. And for the most part, these products are ones that really matter to people every day, and they rely on, in sometimes very fundamental, even life-saving ways. But our mission does include another role, and that's what I'm mainly going to focus on today. We are the agency charged with promoting the science and innovation it takes to ensure that our nation is fully equipped to address the public health challenges of today and tomorrow. This means that our job is both to ensure the safety and efficacy of FDA-regulated products and to take real steps to foster the scientific innovation that will lead to tomorrow's new breakthrough products. And so many of the industries we regulate currently lead the world in innovation, provide millions of high-paying jobs, and several are among the few key industries in our nation with a positive trade balance with other countries. At the same time, the FDA, through our work, helps save billions of dollars in unnecessary spending by preventing foodborne illness and getting products to market that lower health care costs and save lives. Of course, innovation is not just about new ideas, but also making sure that those new ideas truly translate into products and opportunities that people need and count on. It's about changing systems, replacing outmoded or insufficient approaches with new, better, more effective ones. And that's what FDA has been doing in the realms of both safety and innovation for decades. Now, I realize that in many quarters, innovation has become something of a buzzword, and it's taken on a variety of meanings. But at FDA, it's rather simple. As our nation looks ahead into the 21st century, it's increasingly clear how important it is for us to stimulate our industries, encourage entrepreneurship and creativity, and to prepare to address the public health challenges that we face today and that we'll face in the future. And for all of that, we need innovation, which is why it's a central focus at the FDA and always has been. In fact, the modern FDA was born when it became clear that the country needed an agency that would strengthen and innovate systems and fight for the health of the American people from all sides. So a little historical perspective. Back in 1902, the Martin H. Smith Company advertised for a remedy in the treatment of coughs, bronchitis, asthma, laryngitis, pneumonia, and whooping cough. And I'm feeling a bit like I could use that medicine just now. But according to the company, and I quote, "From scientific investigations in hospitals, clinics, and sanitariums, and the personal investigations by prominent physicians, no other preparation has been more successfully developed and withstood such critical scrutiny. No other preparation has had its therapeutic value more thoroughly defined or better established. So you may all be wondering, what was this miracle drug? Well, it was heroin. At the turn of the century, advertisements like this one were common. Companies marketed their patent or proprietary medicines with a variety of unproven claims. Some were potentially deadly, and others were just sugar water. But it took decades for American medicine to emerge from what has been called a therapeutic jungle. As the years progressed, important scientific advances in pharmacology, toxicology, and clinical research were central to this transformation. FDA embraced these advances, insisted upon them, in fact, and helped pull medicine into the modern era, and based on evidence of safety and effectiveness, helped foster the development, review, and approval of new, better, and more innovative products. Many of you may be aware of the famous and defining case 50 years ago of thalidomide, the medication that was widely marketed in Europe as a sedative and recommended for nausea for first trimester pregnant women. Well, the drug turned out to be highly teratogenic, and thousands of babies across Europe, where it had been approved, suffered from a devastating birth defect that stunts the development of bones in the limbs of children. But the drug was never approved in the United States, thanks in large part to the perceptiveness and wisdom of Dr. Frances Kelsey, who's become a bit of a national icon. She refused to sign off on the drug because its sponsor failed to conduct basic tests of pharmacology and toxicology. In a fundamental way, it was FDA's embrace of modern, innovative scientific methods that kept thalidomide off the market and protected countless American lives. But significantly, thanks to those same science-driven approaches, countless other important medications have made it to market and benefited people because the data has shown that those benefits, in fact, outweighed the risks. History has shown that both consumers and industry have a tremendous stake in an agency that takes science-based action on behalf of public health, an agency that not only takes action to keep Americans safe and healthy, but also promotes the science and standards that keeps the engines of innovation running. And this is a critical time for innovation. Unfortunately, today, the return on investment for biomedical products has been dropping. Development costs are high, timelines are long, and the rates of failure remain high. As we look at the medical product pipeline, it is distressingly sparse. Of late, there's been much focus on FDA's role in this decline, largely because rising product development times and costs are attributed to delays and uncertainty in the regulatory approval process. We certainly get a lot of criticism, and much of it is deserved. But in reality, the situation is, of course, much more complex than often described, and it involves many factors that require meaningful strategies. Translating a new idea from a discovery into a medical product is not easy. It clearly involves more players than FDA alone. We are one piece, an important piece of the medical product ecosystem, which includes researchers, governments, small businesses, large biotechnology and pharmaceutical companies, insurance providers or payers, investors, physicians, and most importantly, patients and the American public. Each of these members has a unique and important role to play in bringing a new medical product to market, and each piece of the medical product ecosystem is today under stress. At FDA, I think that we do have a strong record of performance. We meet and often exceed nearly all of the tough review deadlines that have been agreed to with industry. And we consistently approve new drugs and devices as fast or often faster than in any other country, including those in the European Union, while still maintaining the safety standards that Americans depend on. And in just the first half of this year, FDA has been instrumental in bringing several groundbreaking drugs for treating devastating diseases to market. In fact, we've approved 20 new medicines so far this year, which is just one shy of the 21 approved in all of 2010. These include a new treatment for lupus, 2 new therapies for treating hepatitis C, and a new drug for metastatic melanoma. This is clearly great news. And we recognize, however, though, that we can and must continue to work hard and take proactive steps to do a better job going forward. We've been taking a hard look at our regulatory processes, identifying ways to increase transparency, provide more clarity and predictability to the private sector, and to streamline our overall processes. But any real reform must be smart reform, and smart reform can't happen without the input of all the major players. So I've spent countless hours now meeting with and listening to the various stakeholders in the medical product development ecosystem. We've discussed the challenges ahead for everyone involved, as well as what works and what doesn't. And we've looked very hard at the current FDA regulatory framework. These meetings have been extremely informative and educational. They've been quite frank at times, and it's a good thing that over the years in my various public service offices, I've developed a thick skin. But it is clear that our nation is at an important crossroads where the science before us presents unprecedented opportunities to create new and better medical products and to promote better health for the public. But if we don't act now and work together, I fear we will miss the opportunity to capitalize on this groundbreaking science to bring safer and more effective treatments to the American people and to keep our position as the global leader in scientific innovation. I fully believe that success will require greater attention and investment to regulatory science, the science of developing the knowledge, tools, standards, and approaches needed to assess the safety, efficacy, quality, and performance of FDA-regulated products, a field that is essential to the safety and innovation of the work that we do at the FDA, but it's also essential to medical product development itself. And it is an essential component of our scientific enterprise that has been dramatically underappreciated, underfunded, and underdeveloped. Without advances in regulatory science, promising therapies may be discarded during development because we lack the tools to recognize their potential, and because outdated, inefficient review methods unnecessarily delay the approval of critical treatments. On the other hand, both significant dollars and many years may be wasted assessing a novel therapy that with better tools might be shown to be unsafe or ineffective at an earlier stage. So now is the time to move forward. A robust field of regulatory science will allow us to effectively and efficiently translate many of the breakthroughs before us into therapies and cures. Among many opportunities, it will foster the use of advanced genetic data and biomarkers to find faster paths to disease targets. And it will support efforts to optimize clinical trial design to speed the regulatory process and get products to patients faster. Advancing regulatory science will require the full engagement of the scientific community, industry, academia, and government, and it will require broader partnership as well. It will take new investments, approaches, and collaborations for regulatory science to evolve in the way necessary to keep up with and capture the opportunities before us. But if we can achieve this, it will really matter. For all these reasons, I've made regulatory science a top priority since I became commissioner. In addition to strengthening the science base at FDA, we're building the partnerships across government and with academia, industry, and the nonprofit community that will drive the development of innovative medical products and the delivery of better, safer products to the American people and to people around the world. But while regulatory science is certainly an important step toward driving innovation, it's only one piece of the puzzle. During the course of our internal reviews and discussions with stakeholders, several common themes emerged. In response, I've been putting together an innovation initiative that outlines some important steps that we can address that we can take to address these issues and to drive innovation forward. This agenda focuses on implementing major reforms within FDA to address the most immediate concerns we've been hearing from our stakeholders. It addresses everything from streamlining and reforming FDA regulations to creating a rapid new drug development pathway. We'll be releasing more details of this initiative in the coming weeks, but I want to share an important piece of it with you today, and that is FDA's relationship with the small business community. For quite a while now, I've been taking advantage of opportunities such as President Obama's Startup America initiative to hear from small business owners, particularly in the medical device and biotech areas. And in fact, I'll be meeting later today, graciously here at the City Club, with heads of some small device and perhaps some biotech companies here in Cleveland as part of the White House Business Council activities, and I know that that will be a very valuable session. When I meet with small business owners, they often have quite a bit to say, and much of what they share is how they view FDA from their perspective, their challenges, and it is not all flattering. And that does truly concern me. Small businesses are at the heart of innovation and the heart of American economic development. They're the backbone of job creation, and for many people, the definition of the American dream. We see the importance of small businesses every day at FDA. The contribution of small companies to innovation within the biomedical industries is truly striking. They play a crucial role in the development of new products and account for more than half of all pipeline products. And yet many of our small business owners and employees in the medical product space have expressed, as I said, concerns that FDA regulators don't understand and respond to their special circumstances and needs. This is clearly a relationship that we need to work on. And importantly, both sides really do want to work on it together. For a small business, there are unique challenges in navigating the complexities of bringing a medical product to market, including understanding the regulatory requirements for medical product review and being able to align those requirements with the tight timelines and budget pressures that most small businesses have to contend with. Large corporations regularly submit new products to FDA, and they often have entire departments of regulatory experts that deal solely with navigating the FDA review process. But of course, most small businesses, particularly many of those in the device area that are quite small startups, are first-time applicants to FDA. And many of them actually have fewer than 10 employees overall. That inexperience and lack of manpower can make it even more difficult for these companies to bring new products to market, meaning that patients, at the end of the day, are the ones who also suffer because they may not have access to a great new therapy or new device. So after speaking at length with a number of small business owners, I really have a deeper appreciation of why they feel vulnerable in the face of what can seem like an extremely intimidating process to those who are unfamiliar with it. And their sense of financial vulnerability may be even more overwhelming. So as part of FDA's innovation initiative, I'm committed to taking steps to help ease the burden for small companies trying to navigate the FDA review process. We want to build on a number of resources that FDA already has in place to more effectively engage with small businesses and provide them with the tools they need to help them succeed. For instance, each of our medical product centers has a small business office dedicated to helping companies navigate the FDA process. Now, these are small offices, some with only 1 or 2 full-time employees, and quite honestly, they do not yet receive adequate support for their mission. But they're incredibly dedicated to their jobs, and like many others at FDA, manage to do great things with the resources that they have at hand. For instance, the small business office in our Center for Drug Evaluation and Research maintains a listserv of more than 48,000 companies and fields literally thousands of inquiries per year. Many of these inquiries relate to the nuts and bolts of regulation, from questions about different requirements for filing new applications to how to list and register products. In addition to addressing the specific questions of individual companies, our small business offices also handle common questions through proactive measures, such as monthly webinars and appearances at medical conferences. And they even recently started to develop a small business blog for our website to help increase and enhance engagement with the small business community. So for a while there, we actually thought we were doing quite a lot. But despite these efforts, many small businesses remain unaware of the resources that we offer, and others continue to file applications that do not meet FDA's requirements, or they're still unprepared for the process of bringing a product to market. So after engaging both our small business offices and the small business community, it's become clear to me that we need to expand these programs to better meet small companies' needs. For starters, while our small business offices have a deep understanding of the FDA regulatory process, they lack the experience and knowledge of what it takes for a small company to effectively reach milestones and submit an application to FDA. And this can create barriers to effective communication between FDA and small business offices and the companies that seek their assistance. So we'll be establishing an Entrepreneurs in Residence program, and this program will aim to recruit individuals who have extensive experience in starting and running small companies and who have themselves successfully navigated the FDA regulatory process. These entrepreneurs in residence will be responsible for establishing and coordinating more effective interactions between FDA and small businesses, and they'll work with the business staff of small companies to help make them better informed about the company's ability to move through the FDA review process given their current resources and their ability to raise capital. Additionally, these entrepreneurs will train FDA staff on how to engage and network with small businesses more effectively and provide staff with a better understanding of the inherent challenges of running a small business, including the importance of timely communications to project milestone plans. And to complement this effort, we'll also establish a Young Entrepreneurs Program. And in this, the agency will offer fellowships for business, engineering, and science students as part of their educational curriculum. We'll work with universities to establish a 4 to 6 month internship or training course within the small business offices to provide these future entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, scientists, and inventors with firsthand access to information about regulatory review and what it takes to work with and through the FDA approval process. We believe that together these programs will take FDA's relationship with small business to the next level, allowing both parties to communicate more effectively and continue to drive innovation for this important piece of the business community. Finally, we're actively engaged with the Small Business Administration to find innovative, strategic ways to strengthen and support the diverse needs of small businesses through partnership. And we're exploring a range of creative programs, such as an exchange with SBA and FDA employees so that we can cross-fertilize and better understand each other's requirements, competencies, and importantly for FDA, help us to better understand the unique needs of small companies. These enhancements to the FDA Small Business Program are just the first steps in strengthening a critical link in the medical product ecosystem. We hope that by bolstering this important relationship, we can expand our reach to the small business community and help more companies successfully bring those important and innovative new medical products to the patients who need them. So these ideas for small business, as well as some of the other things I've touched on today, are all areas in which we welcome the feedback, input, and partnership of people like all of you and the organizations and institutions that you represent. So I hope you'll consider the challenges that we face today and contribute to our efforts to strengthen the FDA and promote innovation on behalf of the health of the American people. This is a critical time, and there is so much to be done. So thank you for your time and attention, and I look forward to being able to answer your questions very shortly.
Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we are listening to a Friday forum featuring Dr. Margaret Hamburg, Commissioner of the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. We will return to our speaker in a minute for our traditional City Club question and answer period. We encourage you to go ahead and formulate your questions now, and please remember to keep them brief. In 2012, the City Club of Cleveland will turn 100 years old. We're planning a number of events and will be actively soliciting support from the community through our campaign for a new century. Our celebration will begin this October 10th with a major conference on free speech. To learn more about the 100th anniversary, please visit the City Club website, www.cityclub.org/100. We welcome all of you here today and those listening to WCPN 90.3 FM, WCLV, WTAM, or one of the many radio stations across the country. Our television broadcast partner is WVIZ PBS IdeaStream. Television broadcasts of the City Club are made possible by Cleveland State University and PNC. Our live webcast is supported by the University of Akron. We're pleased to have sponsorship support for today's forum from Medical Mutual of Ohio. Medical Mutual has been a strong sponsor of the City Club for many years, and we most appreciate all of their support. We're pleased to welcome at the head table Rick Chiricosta, President and CEO of Medical Mutual of Ohio, and Sue Tyler, Executive Vice President and Chief Experience Officer for Medical Mutual. We're also pleased to welcome guests today at tables hosted by Baker Hostetler, BioEnterprise, Kent State University College of Public Health, Medical Mutual of Ohio, and the University of Akron. Thank you for joining us today. Now, we'd like to return to our speaker for our traditional City Club question and answer period. We welcome questions from all of you. And holding the microphone today are Assistant 100th Anniversary Director Betsy Wallace and 100th Anniversary Intern Phil Williams is over at that end of the room. First question, please.
Welcome. Are counterfeit drugs and devices an issue, and if so, how are you addressing them?
Well, that is a very important and timely question. Counterfeit medical products are a huge and growing concern. It's a worldwide concern. The United States, I'm happy to be able to report, has not had the burden of counterfeit medical product issues that have been seen in other parts of the world, where studies, believe it or not, in some areas such as sub-Saharan Africa have shown that somewhere between 30 and 50% of certain critical medicines needed for vital diseases like malaria are substandard or counterfeit. In this country, however, we do have a continuing problem with counterfeits and substandard medicines, as well as problems with cargo theft of legitimate medical products that then can be reintroduced into the medical product supply chain after having been potentially improperly stored and losing their potency or safety. So it's something that we take very seriously. We are working, of course, closely with industry to address a common set of issues and concerns, and importantly, working with regulatory counterparts around the world, as well as enforcement here in this country and around the world, to try to tighten up supply chains, to target problems quickly as they emerge, to try to raise awareness about this problem, and to try to galvanize additional important action. One other thing I might mention as to why this is of extreme priority for me is that we're seeing a dangerous new trend. Not only are we seeing that the supply chain for medical products and the components of medical products used in this country are increasingly complex. Strikingly, 40% of the drugs that are taken here in this country actually are made outside of our borders, and 80% of the active pharmaceutical ingredients in drugs taken in this country come from other places. So it's a huge issue in terms of those drugs that are available, and ensuring at the most fundamental level the safety and security of the supply chain. But in addition, we're seeing a worrisome trend, which is that organized crime is moving into this area. The penalties at the present time for trafficking in counterfeit drugs are really surprisingly minimal. In fact, it may come with greater penalties to produce counterfeit handbags than counterfeit drugs. So the profit margins are high, the penalties are relatively low. This movement of organized crime into this arena signals that the challenges will only increase in the years to come, and that's why we are working very, very hard and are committed to this issue as part of our commitment to serving the health of the people.
Commissioner, in undertaking this review of the FDA, did you look at other agencies abroad like the EMEA in terms of what they do better and what they do worse? And I guess in particular I would note recently in the news there's been discussion about Avastin, and the FDA, I guess, advisory panel had recommended that it not be used for breast cancer. And at the same time, the European EMEA has reinforced or approved its use for breast cancer. And so I'm wondering, is there a difference in terms of the approaches of the two agencies and how they react? I mean, is this decision just a matter of science or approaches, or what is the difference between these two agencies? So I'd appreciate some comment in terms of the two agencies.
Well, it's a very important issue, and again, you know, as we look out at what are the needs of the future and how can we do things better today, working more closely with regulatory authorities around the world is a critical part of it. It's important for protecting the supply chain and the integrity of products, as I was just mentioning. It's also important because science today is a global enterprise. And it's important because many of the companies we regulate as well are multinational in nature. And the more we can really bring the best science to bear across national regulatory authorities, harmonize standards and approaches, share important information about the products we regulate, the better off everyone will be. That said, we do have different regulatory standards, approaches, and frameworks in certain key areas, and we don't always agree on everything. We do work closely, we share information, and in many, many cases, we come out in the same place. We also, I might add, have different reimbursement strategies, and in many European countries, the assessment after an approval of a drug of whether or not it will be reimbursed is a very different process, and some things that are approved actually don't get reimbursed for the indication that they were approved for because of that reimbursement strategy. And all those things factor into, you know, how the landscape looks for the individual patient and consumers in terms of access to a drug. But, you know, in important areas of activity, there are ways to really harmonize or make our approaches very, very comparable. Much of that depends on the quality of the science and the ability to define standards and approaches. Some of the issues that you were raising in your question also relate to some broader societal issues as well. And there are some differences in terms of societal acceptance of risks and benefits or certain kinds of approaches, not in the drug area, but in the food area, for example, very different attitudes about genetically modified foods in Europe versus the United States. But one of the things that's a huge challenge, I'm not going to speak directly about Avastin because actually I am about to have to review all of the available data and make a decision, so it's an ongoing regulatory process, and I'd rather not, you know, directly comment. But one of the great challenges that we're grappling with is how best do we set up the best possible framework for quantifying risks and benefits and for assessing that important balance with respect to a medical product as we determine whether it should move into the marketplace. It's something that the European Union is also grappling with, and involves many factors. And we are trying to take a very systematic look. It's very qualitative in many ways, but we want to also try to quantify how we think about it and how it influences our decision-making and how different factors in different contexts influence that. It's something we're sharing our thinking with the European Union and trying to together to think about what are some of the best strategies. It's something where as we really develop a clearer framework, we also want to take out and get input from stakeholders, importantly including patients, who ultimately are the ones that must decide what level of risk they're willing to take on in the face of a given medical or health challenge. So very complex issues, very, very important. But while we'll never have one uniform standard across nations, it is a very high priority, and I think the way of the future, to work as closely as possible, communicating as clearly as possible, sharing thinking, strategies, and approaches as much as possible, and hopefully achieving considerable harmonization and unification of approach, which I think will benefit patients and will benefit the industries we regulate.
A couple of short questions. First, are alternative medicines, particularly those sold over the counter, subject to the same regulatory standards as prescription or other drugs, particularly if they have not been peer reviewed? I'm thinking of lutein, glucosamine, and there are hundreds of others.
Yeah.
That's number one. Number two, when a medication goes off patent and becomes available over the counter to the public, does each supplier then, generic supplier, have to go through the same procedure as the original patented drug, or do you make the evaluation on the basis of similarity to the original drug?
Okay, two good questions, two big questions. Let me start with the second one. And just clarify one thing. When a drug goes off patent, it doesn't automatically go over the counter, but it does create the opportunity for the drug to be developed in a generic form, which is often a prescription drug. And the regulatory framework for generics is different than for the innovator drug, the first original drug. And it's a different procedure with different requirements for evidence. And you're right, the demonstration of comparability is very, very important. But they don't need to produce the same levels of original data to support their application. With respect to alternative medicine and some of the dietary supplements that are available in the marketplace, they have a different regulatory framework as well. This is clearly defined in law, and they are not subject to the same kind of pre-market review and approval that medical pharmaceuticals are. They are subject to FDA review in some key areas, including good manufacturing practice in terms of labeling and advertisements and claims, and in terms of adverse event reporting and our follow-up when serious adverse events emerge. But it is a very different scheme, and many dietary supplements are thought of by the public as drugs, but in fact are under the rubric of foods in terms of the FDA regulatory process.
Do you see your new entrepreneurs and residents playing a mediator role?
Well, I think that's part of it. I mean, hopefully this will enable a much deeper engagement around the real issues that small businesses are addressing as they do their research and development work and as they bring their products forward to the FDA for review. I think that mediator in the sense of helping to identify and clarify what are the gaps in how we are responding, the need for clearer guidance, earlier communication, and more definition of expectations and standards. I don't see it as a role where there's a difference of opinion between FDA and a small business about whether the discussion of what the regulatory requirements are fair or not. I don't see it as that kind of a mediation. But hopefully, by having this kind of a program, we will be in a better place where there won't be, head-to-head conflict about the company thinking this is just crazy and we don't want to do it, and the FDA thinking, of course, this is the appropriate approach and it's what needs to be done. We're hoping to find, through deepened engagement and more understanding, a pathway that will become institutionalized in terms of helping small businesses have more clarity about the regulatory pathways and more predictability about what will be expected of them, and in turn will have a deeper appreciation of what are the challenges from the perspective of small business.
Dr. Hamburg, several times today during your talk, you referred to regulations which are issued by your agency, the Food and Drug Administration, to basically protect the health and safety of Americans. Certainly a very commendable purpose. In recent days, there's been an increasing chorus coming out of Washington against regulations. The chorus is mainly led by Republicans in the House of Representatives, the Senate, and they've used a mantra, let's get the government off our backs. To what extent do you feel that policy, that endeavor, is in any way interfering with the wonderful work which your agency strives to accomplish?
Well, thank you, and a very, very important question from my perspective. I do firmly believe that what the FDA does, our mission and our core functions, represent in many ways the best of government, protecting and promoting the health of the public, is achieved through the activities that we undertake in important ways that, as I mentioned, really do impact people every day in very fundamental ways. And when you look at it, there is not another agency of government or any private sector institution or other entity that provides the services that we do and can backstop behind us to do these important jobs. And these are things that people really depend on. I think that when surveys of the public are done, they indicate that these are services that they expect of their government. And even in recent times, there have been surveys saying that the public would be willing to actually pay a bit more to be able to have confidence in the safety of their food supply, for example. And you look at what happens when there is a significant safety problem with a medical product in the marketplace. The public takes it very seriously, and there's usually an outcry of how did this possibly happen. So I think in fundamental ways the public looks to FDA and counts on FDA to provide these services, and Republican or Democrat, rich or poor, blue state, red state, I think that there is more consensus than may appear about the importance of many of our core functions and responsibilities. On the other hand, I think we do have a real responsibility to ensure that we are doing our jobs as effectively and efficiently as possible, that we don't have unnecessary burdensome regulation, that we really are focused on doing those things that really matter, and that we are accountable to the people and to our elected officials in terms of how we spend our dollars, and making sure that we are true to our mandates and our mission. So, we anticipate that over the next years, we will be working under very intense pressures, budget pressures, and to some degree, political pressures to demonstrate the importance of what we do and the responsible stewardship that we provide in doing those jobs. And I certainly intend to do my very best to represent the agency, to advocate for our critical needs, to support our mission, and to make what we do more transparent and understandable to people and policymakers, so that we can gain their trust and confidence and support.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hamburg, for your very informative presentation, and especially for your description of the initiatives with small businesses. Over recent days, there has been some increasing concern expressed especially by healthcare providers about the growing drug shortage in this country, and it's causing an adverse effect on patient care in many cases. Could you comment, please, on what the FDA is doing with respect to the shortage?
Well, it is a very serious problem, and of course it affects some critical areas of medical care. And recently there have been shortages in cancer therapeutics, for example, that have really brought into very vivid focus the importance of working on these issues. Very often the shortages occur when there is, a limited number of manufacturers and a product, that fills a particular niche. Sometimes they are products that are used more broadly. But we do have a critical role to play. And it's actually one of the areas that I really had not understood till I came in to this role as commissioner. And I think it's quite a proactive role, but I think there are things that can be done to enhance what we can do and how we can be helpful, and also the importance of the partnership of all the stakeholders working together. We work very closely with providers and healthcare systems to try to get early intelligence on emerging concerns about shortages, and also working with industry to try to get early warning when there's a problem. Sometimes we're aware of the problem because if there is a manufacturing issue, if we've identified a quality concern in one of these products, we may have to work with that company to figure out a strategy, knowing that perhaps they're going to have to bring down their manufacture, but that it represents an important product with limited other options in terms of medical care. We work with other countries in those kind of circumstances where there is a shortage that's come about either because of a quality concern with that drug by a U.S. manufacturer, or because of other reasons that may underlie a shortage, a company deciding to get out of the business, or simply demand shifting, or drops in manufacture because of uncontrollable circumstances. All of those things occur. So we do try to identify other sources of drugs, sometimes looking overseas, working with our counterpart regulatory authorities. We work with companies, if one company has an issue, trying to get another company to increase their manufacture, production, availability of a critical shortage drug. But I think there's some important steps underway to try to deal with this in a more systemic way and really improve both the intelligence about where shortages are and may be, and enable appropriate, timely response. There's an important piece of legislation that's being looked at on the Hill, which I think could potentially address some important aspects of this. One thing is we need better information from companies, and companies may be reluctant to engage us if they see an emerging problem, because they think we'll come in to help and actually, ask them to do something that they might not want to do. But the earlier we can get involved, the more we can be helpful proactively in addressing the problem and trying to prevent the shortage from occurring. It's also extremely important for us to get feedback as early as possible from institutions like yours, the Cleveland Clinic, and other institutions, big and small, across the country, when you're starting to see shortage problems, because sometimes you're the first to really identify a problem in the pipeline. So it's a very, very important issue. It's one that really is very much on the radar screen of FDA and my personal radar screen, working with industry and the healthcare community to try to better understand all of the dimensions of the problem and how we can develop meaningful, sustainable solutions to prevent shortages going forward.
Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we've been listening to a Friday forum featuring Dr. Margaret Hamburg, Commissioner of the Federal Food and Drug Administration. Thank you, Dr. Hamburg. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This forum is now adjourned.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.